Alright guys, welcome back to Work in Progress on this Halloween Zock project. Halloween, of course, already come and gone by now, but I do want to see the project through to the finish. So all of the cloth covering is now done on this. Most of the kit is all kind of glued in place, but you can see kind of how the cloth covering is looking now compared to how it was looking before, when that was just a bunch of plastic all glued together, just basically to make the extensions in the limbs, but it's looking pretty good so far. I like it. It's much heavier now too, with a whole bunch of putty. This time I used the Display epoxy putty, and it's my first time using that, and I've actually found it to be like really nice, so definitely going to use that more in the future or anytime I need to make something along these lines. So had pretty good time with that. There's a little bit of detail that I want to add to it, basically with little bits of plot plate. I just want to glue little bits of plot plate around on the design just to give it a little bit more kind of mechanical detail around on some of the armor parts. And then we're also going to add some texture in on some of the armor as well, using two different methods for adding some texture. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so with some bits added on there, ready to go ahead and add some texture now. Two different ways, like I said, we're gonna add. First way is the more subtle texture. You're just using cement. So basically you just slop the cement on there, and then you can use whatever, like a wire brush also would work, or like a wire sponge or something like that. I just like using just a plastic toothbrush here. It's just old toothbrush. Yeah, this is definitely the more subtle method compared to like using putty, which is the more common method and can give you like a much more drastic texture, and we'll try that out after this. That's what I'm going to use for the second method, but at least for this here, so you can see I just slopped on a good amount of glue there, and basically what the glue is doing is just to melt the surface of the plastic, and then while it's still wet, you want to just dab it like this. I've shown this in different videos before, so you guys have probably hopefully maybe seen this in the past, but as you can see here, this is basically then just taking that melted plastic that's on the surface level and just roughing it up basically. So as you can see there, once we're done with that, you got some nice texture on there that will come through nicely in the paint, and it won't be, you know, like I said, this is definitely somewhat subtle, and I'm not going to apply it everywhere on all the armor, just on some certain sections, and then we'll apply the rougher texture in different sections, and it won't be kind of like an overall look on all the armor parts, but just on some bits. All right, then for my next trick and the last step that we're gonna do before we can finally get some paint on this is gonna make some putty texture. You guys have probably seen this done before. In this case, I'm just using some Tamiya basic putty. Just gonna put some in here. I'm not gonna need a whole lot, which is good because this tube's almost done. Whew, and it was a struggle just to poop out that little bit of putty there. Yeah, this tube is pretty much done. Just gonna have to get some more, but that's enough for our purposes. You can then, you can actually thin it down just with some surfacer. So if you airbrush and you use surfacer just from a bottle, not from a spray can, so surfacer primer, you can just mix that here with this. I've got like some dry bits in there, but that's fine just because it's gonna be thinned down. Because this is relatively thick already, rather than using surfacer to thin this down, just gonna use some thinner, and we're just gonna have to mix it up good and well. As for how much thinner to use, there's no exact ratio necessarily to it. Just add a little bit and just kind of start mixing it up, and then see if you need to add more. If it's too thin, if it basically turns like too thin to paint, you're not really gonna get much texture out of it, but you could ultimately thin it down to essentially being like a primer. And so once I've got this mixed up so it's still like kind of chunky like that, not super smooth yet, just again, it depends on how much thinner you add to it. You can thin it all the way down, but I think that's gonna be just enough for our purposes. I'm not gonna use a whole lot of this. Also, it would be ideal to use just regular thinner, not leveling thinner, because leveling thinner, the idea is that it has a slower drying time, and so it allows the paint to level out more. In this case, we don't want this to level out because we want texture, so that's why just using regular thinner usually would be the preferred option. I don't have any actually on hand. I just only have the leveling thinner. It'll work perfectly fine, but between the two, that would be the preferred option. Anyway, for applying it onto the kit, just going to use this old junky brush. Really, you could use whatever you want. I could just use this stir stick that I've been using just to kind of scoop some up and kind of smear it where I want it on the kit. Essentially, it just doesn't really matter too much. And essentially, it's just going to be a similar method like we did with the glue. Just going to apply some of this around like on the shoulder area right there. And then I'm going to use my old toothbrush to kind of dab that a bit like that. And as this is starting to dry, the toothbrush is then giving that a nice texture to it. And so hopefully you can kind of see there how that's going to look. It's going to be a little rougher than what we did with the glue, but not too rough. And again, you can adjust this as needed. If you wanted it to be more rough, you can just not thin down your putty mix quite as much, or you can apply additional layers after this. If I wanted that to be a bit rougher, I could go in and add some more onto that. But I think that's pretty good. I don't want it to be like really extreme, but I think that'll be perfect for my purposes. I'm going to go ahead and add some more of this around on a few bits, and then we'll be ready to add some surface around here. And while I'm doing this, I also just want to ask you guys to share down in the comments if you ever tried adding texture to your model kits in this way or in a similar way. What's a preferred method or tool or product that you found useful? Because there's a bunch of different ways to do this. This is just one way that I'm showing you. But if you guys have ever tried this and you use like a different method or a different product, let us know down in the comments so that people can check, maybe see some different ideas for how they might want to try it on their own model kits. All right, and so I think for now, that pretty much just about does it. I'm ready to get some surfacer on this, so just giving us one more kind of look around this before, and then we can see it after. I think it's going to look so much more coherent once we get some surfacer on there, so let's do it. All right, back in black here, and you can see how once it's painted, all like the funky colors of everything being all mixed matched and everything, it's much more cohesive looking now once it's all kind of uniform in color. And then obviously once we get some paint on it, that will help even further just to kind of improve the look. I'm liking how it's looking. It's definitely kind of what I was going for. Ultimately, I'm not sure just how cool really it's going to look, but in my attempt at just kind of not necessarily improving the look of the Zock, but just changing the look of the Zock, it certainly is doing that, making it much more of a monstrous appearance. So it's successful in that sense. Ultimately, how it's going to turn out, I guess we'll just have to wait for the next episode, because I'm going to end this work in progress here as the main kind of work is now done. Now it's just basically the paint and the finish work and putting it on the base. So I think we'll save that for the next video. Until then, thanks guys for checking out the video here today. You can check out some more model kits, paints, tools, and supplies, and all that good stuff at USA Gundam Store. The link is down in the video description as always. And until next time, thanks so much for watching, guys, and share your thoughts down in the comment section. What do you think, how it's looking so far? Let me know. I'll see you all in the next one. Later.